May 10th to May 17th, the Retro Cup is happening in Go Battle League in Pokemon Go. If you're not familiar with the Retro Cup is basically the Great League meta. However, Fairy types, Dark types, and Steel types are removed from the meta. That means no Azumarill, no Bastiodon, no Skarmory, no Umbreon, no quite a bit of things here, right? In this video, I'm going to be simplifying the Retro Cup meta for you, highlighting the top picks, or the top threats, if you will, and I'll also go over some example teams with you, the best teams, if you will. So before we get into the top picks here in the Retro Cup meta, I want you to understand exactly what's going on in the Retro Cup, why the Retro Cup is the way it is. So, starting out, basically, Fairy-type Pokemon not being in the meta really doesn't, I guess, matter a whole lot in context of this specific cup. You lose a Azumarill, and that's basically it. Charmers aren't there, but Charmers were always fairly easy to manage in the normal Great League as it was, especially since we had Steel-type Pokemon around. So, with Fairy-types being out, it really doesn't change a whole heck of a lot. What does change a lot is the fact that we don't have Dark and Steel type Pokemon. Now, if you aren't a Pokemon historian here, you may be unaware that Dark and Steel was added in Generation 2 of Pokemon to help balance out Psychic type Pokemon. In Generation 1, Psychic type Pokemon were just insane. Nothing resisted them except for themselves, and nothing really had effective damage against them. Like, bug types and ghost type Pokemon could have effective damage against them, but there really weren't any like bug or ghost type attacks, and the top ghost type Pokemon, the only ghost type Pokemon if you will, was Gengar, and Gengar was sub-poison type, so it was also weak to the psychic type attacks. So Dark and Steel were created to help, you know, hit down on the psychic types a little bit. With Dark and Steel type out of this particular meta, you can bet that Psychic type Pokemon are absolutely going to be at the top of the list. However, we've got some pretty dynamic Ghost type Pokemon and Ghost type attacks here in Pokemon Go. Over the generations, Ghost types have risen in power. And, you know, with Dark type Pokemon out, you know, mostly Dark type Pokemon because they resist and hit super effective, but also the Steel type Pokemon. Those were usually pretty hard for the Ghost types to manage for the most part. Yeah, Ghost types are going to be really big too, and the Ghost types generally beat the Psychic type Pokemon, so Ghost types and the Psychic types, those guys are going to be pretty big here. And then what beats these types of Pokemon? You know, there is no Dark to manage this stuff. What is super effective here aside from like Ghost itself? Well, we do have the normal type Pokemon with Ghost and Dark type attacks. The normal types resisting the Ghost type attacks and then hitting back with their own Ghost or Dark type super effective hits. These Pokemon are also really good against Psychic type Pokemon because they usually are fairly bulky and then they've got that Ghost type super effective damage. So boom, we got our normal type Pokemon here. And before I go any further with this meta infographic here, I just want to remind you guys that this isn't like an exhaustive list of all the good Pokemon in one particular role or another for the particular cup. It's just some bigger picks that I chose to highlight here. So, you know, like, what is it? Linoone has Shadow Claw. It's a normal type Pokemon. It can work out in this particular role, right? There's plenty of ghost type Pokemon, like, you got Haunter, why not Gengar? Aren't they the same exact thing, right? So if Haunter is good, Gengar obviously isn't bad, and other ghost type Pokemon like Dusclops, that guy's also pretty good here. So I just tried to go with representative Pokemon. So not an exhaustive list, plenty of other Pokemon in these roles can work out. So I just want to get that passed to you guys there before we go on further. So bringing it back to the Retro Cup Meta Simplified here, what loses to Ghost and Psychic type Pokemon and beats normal type Pokemon? Obviously it's going to be the fighting type Pokemon, right? So yeah, we got the good old Fight Club here with, you know, Deoxys Defense Form being the premier counter user with the big bulk. It's not a fighting type, it's got counter though, so it's basically a fighting type Pokemon. And yeah, these guys obviously pretty big. They beat down on the normal types. They get beaten down by the Ghost type Pokemon. And there you have it, the basic rock, paper, scissors of the meta. Now obviously there are plenty of other Pokemon that work really well. Interesting thing about this core meta is that there's a lot of types that are just straight up neutral against them, or maybe even effective against one particular type here or another. So there are a ton of neutral options that work really, really well in this meta. However, neutral doesn't exactly equate to dominance, right? So when it comes to the basic rock, paper, scissors of the meta, these are the types that are dominating the other types. So when it comes to the other options here, they are neutrally good and they can get the one over on one particular pick or type or another. But, you know, the basic core meta here that the meta is going to be centralized around, it's going to be around this. So yeah, we do got plenty of other really good Pokemon that work out well in this meta. Obviously, these are Pokemon that are often really, really good in the Great League. And just about any pick that is really, really good in the Great League is still going to be good in the Retro Cup. Just like I said, the meta is going to tend to centralize around these primary groups. But, you know, these Pokemon and other Pokemon in the Great League obviously are going to be really good. Now, to give you a basic rundown of the top threats here in this meta, the top Ghost-type threat, by and large, is going to be Froslass. Froslass is pretty insane here because, you know, nothing really resists its Ice-type attacks, and if they do, they're probably not resisting their Ghost-type attacks. So unless you're ballsy enough to bring, like, Bibarel into this particular meta, Froslass is a relatively unresisted Pokemon and is super threatening, especially if Froslass can get a shield advantage or an energy lead by swapping in. Yeah, Froslass is insane. And if you check on PvPoke, you will see that Froslass is like the top swap-in Pokemon and the top closer. And yeah, there's no surprise there because this thing is fast and this thing is extremely deadly. Like when it comes to the Lickers here, the you know, the normal ghost attacker guys, the Lickers, you know, generally they will beat the Ghost-type Pokemon. They will beat the Froslass. They will wear it down. But Froslass will reach those avalanches so quickly that chances are you're going to come out of that fight with a shield advantage because they can only tolerate so many avalanches. So yeah, Froslass, super deadly and super powerful. Another Pokemon to highlight here is going to be the Mew. Mew is not a Ghost-type Pokemon, but it's got Shadow Claw, so it's basically a Ghost-type Pokemon. And big claim to fame, aside from being a total and complete mystery box here, is that it resists the Psycho Boost. So it is a counter to the Deoxys defense form that resists Psycho Boost, so that's definitely worth highlighting here. But just like the Ghost-type Pokemon, you know, it is a Psychic-type Pokemon. It's going to go down to that lick damage inevitably, right? So yeah, Mew. And then because it does have the Shadow Claw and it is fast on the draw with its own charge moves, then yeah, it does have the potential to beat the Ghost-type Pokemon, but Ghost-types do have effective hit against Mew, so it's a little bit, it's not too easy for Mew here. If you do want to know what my preferred moveset is here for Mew, the best moveset, if you will, I'm really feeling the Dragon Claw with the Wild Charge there. So like the standard Mew moveset, the one I highlighted in my video like a bajillion months ago talking about Mew's best moveset, I feel like we do have a return to that moveset in this particular meta because there's no Galarian Stunfisk here basically to shut it down and make it want to use like Surf or Flame Charge instead. PvPoke does say like Rock Slide is a preferred move for Mew in this particular meta, probably thanks to Froslass and the flying type Pokemon. That definitely wouldn't be a bad move, but I'm definitely feeling the Dragon Claw if anything else there, and Wild Charge is always nice to throw at stuff in neutral, so yeah, that's my my 10 cents on the Mew here. And everything else featured here, obviously pretty good. When it comes to Pringle Can Man here, I do want to give a little shout out to the Bubble set, because if you do go with like Bubble Beam Shadow Ball, then it's just going to be a miserable time against the Lickers, where if you have Bubble, then you can at least like do a little bit of damage of them before getting licked down. You know, in some situations, the Hex is probably going to be better too, and using Ice Beam or like, you know, Shadow Ball Ice Beam, that could also be better too. So I don't know, I guess don't take my word for it. I haven't used Jellicent yet myself, so it just seems like a pretty tricky Pokemon in this meta. It can be really good, but if you got the wrong moveset, it could be really, really bad. Then moving on to the Lickers here, the normal types. The best one by and large is going to be the XL Lickitung with the Body Slam, which is a legacy move, I'm pretty sure, with the Power Whip. Yeah, and this thing's insane. And the reason why it rises to the top is because it's XL. It's the thickest of these normal type Pokemon, allowing it to do a lot of things that these ones can't do just based off the fact that it's just so insanely thick. For example, against most Altaria, Lickitung here, XL Lickitung, can beat it in the 1 shield and the 2 shield just by virtue of it being that thick and being able to reach those body slams off of its thickness. So this thing definitely dominates when it comes to this particular group. Then you got Snorlax and Zangoose here hanging out in the background, and yeah, they're Pokemon that have that, you know, normal like ghost type attacking action going on, but they also carry fighting type attacks. So that can allow them to get the one over on their normal type brethren by throwing those explosive fighting type moves there. So pretty big highlight when it comes to them. Then when it comes to the other 2 Lickers that are featured here, they kind of do feel like budget knockoff versions of the Lickitung here. the XL Lickitung. It's like, if you don't got this guy and you don't really want to do the fighting type thing, you want to do like the thick thing, or you want to be a little bit more of a mystery box, that's why you'd consider, you know, Munchlax or Licky there. But at the end of the day, I feel like they do live in the shadow of the other Pokemon in this particular group. Another interesting thing to note with the Zangoose here is Zangoose is extraordinarily glassy. So yeah, it goes down really easy to a lot of neutral hits. For example, Avalanche. Avalanche can one-shot Zangoose, so Zangoose does not have an easy time. For Zangoose's benefit, though, it does have Shadow Claw, so it does some decent damage and has better energy gains than what the Lickers have. And then it also has Night Slash, so unlike the other Lickers, for the most part, it has that coverage against Ghost-type Pokemon, so you're not stuck just kind of relying on your fast move damage to take things down. It's definitely rough, you know, when you're stuck against a Drifblim and it's just throwing Icy Winds onto your like Munchlax or your like Snorlax there. You can't really do anything to hit back against them, so you're just kind of stuck just licking endlessly. Zangoose doesn't have that problem so much because it's got the Night Slash. I'd say Zangoose is a pretty, you know, high risk, high reward kind of Pokemon when it comes to this meta. Then moving on over to the fighting type Pokemon, obviously Deoxys Defense Form dominates here. It can beat the other fighting type Pokemon with its eyes closed. It's got Psycho Boost, which is insane and widely unresisted in this particular meta. And then it's got, you know, Rock Slide for really good coverage. Maybe Thunderbolt if you want to go with that type of coverage. But I feel like in this particular meta, I feel like Rock Slide's probably going to be the move of choice for the most part. Deoxys Defense Form, man, I really wish I had it. But yeah, really good. I'd say the main reasons why you'd want to consider Medicham or Machamp, or Shadow Machamp, if you will, is because they have the more aggressive counter damage. They're pure, you know, full-blooded fighting type Pokemon using counter, so they're able to, you know, beat down the Lickers a little bit faster and a little bit harder than what Deoxys Defense Form can. And then they've got fighting type charge attacks to back them up to help take down these things that much more quickly. Deoxys Defense Form here, man, it does have the effective hit, it does have the counter, but these things do have the effective hit on it too, so it can be a little bit rough for Deoxys Defense Form to deal with these things sometimes, where the other fighters have a little bit more of an advantage. Quick thing to note too, I don't have any Pokemon with like evil spooky eyes in here, but just about any shadow form of a Pokemon is going to be viable in this particular meta. I'd say that Shadow Machamp is a little bit better than normal Machamp here. It is a lot more aggressive. For instance, it can beat down a Froslass in the 1 shield and the 2 shield with basically just straight cross chop the Shadow Machamp, so it is really impressive here, and I would say use the Shadow Machamp if you can instead of regular Machamp. If you are considering regular Machamp, then you may want to look towards Deoxys Defense Form if you have it, and the Medicham, which you probably should have. So yeah, or maybe not using a fighting type Pokemon. Normal Machamp is good, but it's not great. So yeah, I put more faith in the Shadow in this instance. But yeah, when it comes to like Shadow Snorlax, that guy's fine. Shadow anything else here that has a Shadow, definitely not bad. So yeah, don't think I'm leaving the Shadows out intentionally here. It's just we got limited space. I don't want to double up, you know. Then when it comes to the other options here, obviously we have the Psychic type Pokemon being really strong. Cresselia is nice because it's so tanky, but I do kind of favor the Hypno a little bit more, and the Shadow Hypno, also really good there, because they do have that Ghost type coverage. And then when it comes to the Cresselia here, Cresselia does have that Grass and Fairy type coverage, so it does have the potential to get completely walled by a Alola Marowak should it show up, or, you know, against the Talonflame should that thing show up. Unless you want to risk using the Psychic attack, what's it called, Future Sight? Yeah, unless you want to risk using Future Sight, this thing can get walled really, really hard. And then when it comes to Future Sight comes a little bit too late sometimes. So Cresselia is as big of a wall as ever, but I feel like it is a little bit vulnerable in this particular meta, where Hypno and Shadow Hypno, they always got, you know, that Axe of Freedom with the Shadow Ball, and then of course any of the elemental punches can work out depending on what you're trying to prepare yourself to beat down. And then there's always the hidden attack, the Focus Blast, and I guess that would be really big against the normal type Pokemon should you land it, but I feel like without Steel type Pokemon in the meta and without Dark types, it is a little bit less of a good idea than it would be in the normal Great League meta, but definitely a surprise, as always. And then I decided to put Talonflame and Galvantula here at the top of the list. Like, this isn't like a hierarchy, but I guess when it comes to these two being at the top, it is a little bit of a hierarchy. I noticed in practice that these two could get the one over on a lot of team comps that aren't prepared for them. Like, they're a bit of a big blind spot for a lot of teams. So if they get the ball rolling, they can just roll over a team super hard. And as you'll see with like the top team options provided by PvPoke here, you will see that Agrav is like a top performer in a lot of these teams, and I'm not terribly surprised because it does have a good matchup against a lot of the ghosts, and it is neutral against basically everything, and it does give you that extra layer of protection against these two Pokemon, which have been continuously a big blind spot for me in my practice here. They just get away, and they just start sweeping, and you didn't think they would, and now here they are, just sweeping your team. So yeah, pretty dangerous and deadly Pokemon. But yeah, when it comes to everything else featured on this graphic, just standard meta stuff here. This guy's always good, this guy's always good. I feel like Lantern has a little bit more headway in this meta than it usually does. I really like the Lantern. The Ice Waters here are a little bit risky because if the Pringle Can Man does show up, then they're having a really bad time. But aside from that particular matchup, they're definitely not bad, you know, unless Lantern shows up. So, you know, things get a little bit more muddled over here on the side. It's not as straightforward as the core meta, you know? And then Altaria and Dragon Breath users in general, very good in this meta. There isn't any Steel or any Fairy-type Pokemon to resist them in their, you know, path to glory here. But there is a lot of other neutral attackers that are kind of doing their job a little bit better, namely these guys. I mean, Lickitung is so good, it can out-lick the Altaria here in a lot of instances. So, the Dragon Breath users, none of them are bad, but you know, they're not exactly top meta Omega threats. And then we got some rock stuff happening over here. Big rock guys. You gonna be the ice Pokemon, you're gonna be a flying bug. We got rocks. Rocks are neutral. No steel type to stop our rocks. We're rocking. So yeah, this is basically it, the Retro Cup Simplified. If you need a simple way to build a team, you could just stick to this core meta here, you know, do a ABC team or do a ABB team where you double up on one side or another. Just make sure you keep the other big threats in mind when you're going through this team building process. And if you are going for like a double ghost kind of strategy, you're really going to want to have Froslass. If you're going for a double normal type of strategy, I feel like you really do want to have the XL Lickitung there. So if you are thinking about doing those double up kind of strategies and you don't have the XL Lickitung like primarily, then doubling up on normal type might not work out super well for you, just because Lickitung is that solid rock that holds it together. And then of course, you do have everything else in the meta here, but I feel like a lot of teams are going to gravitate back towards this basic core with maybe one or two of these options to kind of, you know, shake the cage a little bit. Now, if you want some example teams, some canned teams to help you get your feet wet in this meta until you figure it out for yourself, PvPoke does have the data from its training battles, letting you know, highlighting the top performing teams from that data there. And what we're seeing, top team here, best team if you will, is the Lickitung with the Froslass and the Hypno. And yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of Lickitung and Froslass amongst all these teams because these two Pokemon, by and large, are two of the top performers in this meta. Like second team here, you can see it's got Froslass. Third team, we got Lickitung. Fourth place team doesn't have either. That's pretty interesting, right? This one, 5th place, breaks from the script. We do have Mew, though, which is a good ghost-type attacker. But then we're back at it again. We got the Froslass, we got the Froslass. We got Munchlax, no Lickitung? Wow. But then Lickitung, Froslass, Froslass, Froslass. So yeah, these two Pokemon definitely are going to be big staples in the meta. I'm feeling pretty sad that I don't have an XL Body Slam Lickitung. So Froslass, I'm going to be riding that thing all the way to Legend if I can. But yeah, link in the description to this analysis here so you can get learned up on these top teams. And maybe practice with the training battler as well. It definitely gets me prepped for a lot of these metas. And that about wraps it up for the Retro Cup Meta Simplified here. If you want this infographic, link in the description for that infographic so you can ogle it yourself. You don't have to screenshot this video and figure it out that way, right? If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these patron supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Problem that it has though is that it is vulnerable to the ghost type attacks, but you know, so is Metacham here and Machamp.